Okay, so we are coming to the story of Abraham. Chapter 11, verse 20. So I have to do it. Okay, I'll do it. 11:22. I'll start with 22. When Serug was 30 years old, he fathered Nahor. After the birth of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and fathered sons and daughters. When Nahor was 29 years old, he fathered Terah. After birth of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and fathered sons and daughters. When Terah was 70 years old, he fathered Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. These are Terah's descendants. Terah fathered Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran fathered, by the way, we will see there is a city called Haran. There are many of these cities were named after these people. Haran fathered Lot. So Lot is Abraham's nephew. Haran died in presence of his father Terah in his native land, Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor both married. Abram's wife was called Sarai. Nahor's wife was called Milcah, daughter of Haran, father of Milcah and Ishach. Sarai was barren, having no child. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, and son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law, the wife of Abraham, and made them leave Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But on arrival in Haran, they settled there. Terah's life lasted 205 years. Then he died in Haran. Okay, so I guess first question which we often get in this type of passages, are these numbers real, this length of life? Anybody wanted to get answer to that question? They are very silent.
I heard somebody.
Okay, you will get the answer even if you don't ask for it. What can I...
We knew that. We knew that, Father.
Since I started, I have to finish. I think the one professor was telling this story in archaeology in area of Suez Canal, when they were digging, I would say, Canal of Suez, whatever, I would say. And there were many Arabs working, helping there. And he noticed there was son and father working together. So in small talk, he spoke with the father. The father, as many people of biblical time, many people of Middle East still today, he could recite genealogy, his genealogy for 6 generations back without a problem. When this man asked him, how old is your son? And the son looked like a teenager. He says, by Allah, I don't know. He might be 20, he might be 30, he might be 40. I don't know. But he was born 1 year after, I don't know. I think 1 year after the war started or whatever started. The guy who spoke with him, this professor, he figured out the boy was about 15 years old. And the father stayed 15.
15?
Yeah. And the father was saying, oh, by Allah, I don't know how old is he, 20 or 30 or 40. You see, these people...
They don't care.
First of all, they always use round numbers, okay? And second, they don't have precise idea of the age. They know somewhere there, who cares? And for sure, if they want to say, so many of these numbers, especially ages given, are symbolic. They give the numbers which are perfect numbers, so for perfect life, somebody who lived the fullness of life, they want to show that he lived the perfect. That doesn't mean that the Bible is incorrect. It's just the way of how they speak. For them, that's not any in any way bring any incorrectness. That's expressing this man had the fullness of life. And how we say he has fullness of life, he lived under 75 years. That's it. It's different way of expressing things. Make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. It does.
Good. Okay, so many of these numbers, we cannot use these numbers to calculate truly the ages. They might be, I would not have any problem believing that they might have lived longer than we at the time, if it's the will of God, whatever. And at one point in this, didn't read it, in Genesis chapter 6, God says that he limited the age of man to 120, that man will not live more than 120. So that was just kind of introduction to see where we are. Yet we hear about Abraham that he was 75 years old when he received the promise, and we'll work with that. It's not necessarily, if we don't have some specific reason to doubt the number, why we would doubt it, but we also don't need to take them as. So I always, unless there is some specific reason to doubt the number, I take them as possible true number. Okay, let's now read from chapter 12.
Yahweh said to Abram, leave your country, your kindred, and your father's house for a country which I shall show you, and I shall make you a great nation. I shall bless you and make your name famous. You are to be a blessing. I shall bless those who bless you, and shall curse those who curse you. And all clans on earth will bless themselves by you. So Abram went to Yahweh, told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abraham took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they amassed, and the people they had acquired in Haran. They set off to the road of Canaan and arrived there.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
We have enough to start. I guess first question which often appears here, why God chose Abraham? And we don't know. To give you honest answer, nobody knows. But we can guess. So what are your guesses?
Well, he didn't have kids to interfere to start with. Probably because, sorry, she was barren. And so by all that happens going forward, certainly Abraham had to put his trust in God.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing, yeah. If you don't have other attempts, I'll go in.
And tell us what it is.
Well, no, nobody knows. I can tell you two things. One is the Jewish attitude, and which I don't like, because I think they missed the point there. Basically, they feel they want to present Abraham as perfect. And so they present Abraham that by his own reason, he rejected idolatry. He lived in the place of idolatry, where, and according to many midrashes, his father had the shop where he sold idols, and Abraham smashed these idols and so on, showing that they are not gods and so on. Many midrashes try to show that Abraham basically earned his call from God by being so smart and having so clear understanding of that God is, there is only one God, that there are no false gods. If he would have this understanding, that would already be the gift of God. Such understanding is not against human reason, but it is our human reason clouded by sin cannot discover that. So we need the help of God to discover that. I like more one story, which I don't know where did I hear it, so that's what is lacking in that story, kind of reference. But it says that God asked many people. It says, let me say it this way. God says, I'm looking to fill the position of the prophet. And he approaches Genghis Khan and asks, tell me, what do you see? How do you see man? And Genghis Khan says, oh, man is a beast. He is an animal. He just needs to be caged in and controlled by force. And then he approached some Greek philosopher who says, oh, man is sublime soul, whose soul is above his body, and whose soul is reflection of the wisdom of God. And God said to Genghis Khan and to a Greek philosopher, okay, don't call me, I will call you later. And then he approached Abraham and he asked Abraham, what do you think about man? And Abraham says, God, don't ask me. I don't know. One day man is like a beast, another day he looks like reflection of God. I'm all confused. And God says, oh, you are man for the job. because he didn't have his preconceived ideas. He's ready to listen. He's ready to be docile. You understand? This is what makes him acceptable, what enables him to be led by God. Somebody who already knows everything ahead of time, he will not listen to God. I usually define that you might have heard me defining this symptom in homily as smart assness, being smart ass, knowing everything ahead of time. Abraham, knowing his own weakness, if we see him in the beginning of the story, and that's important, that's exactly confirm his position of man who is confused, who didn't figure out anything because he's failed man. At that time, for everybody, it's important to have children, especially sons. It's not only about having descendants, not only about prolonging, one part is prolonging your life in the life of through your descendants. In some way, your existence prolongs through them. But it's also in this concrete life, you need descendants who will defend you. You need, if you have 10 sons, you create small army which can defend you. And whatever you have, then you can have piece of land, and these sons can defend this piece of land. This is very important. If you don't have piece of land where you can be buried, that's all. Your life seems very, very meaningless, going nowhere. All these things were so important for Abraham, and he could not fulfill them. That's exactly I don't know if I should again go back to our situation today. What is important about the situation of coronavirus is shows us we don't control life. And that's why that's extremely important for us to figure out. We are not in control. And we are not comfortable when we are not in control. And Abraham, that's what opens him to follow God, because Abraham figured out, I'm not in control of my life. Whatever I do, I cannot reach the happiness. According to some stories, Abraham tried everything possible to have children. If they told him, you have to unite with your wife on the top of this mountain when there is full moon, he would go there. Sarah, let's go there on the top of that mountain, wait for full moon, and then we'll have a son. And nothing happened. And all other smart advices he followed. I know you have to wear boots when you are with your wife. You have to, whatever magical advice they gave him. Nothing helped. And God, as often, we turn to God when everything else fails. And Abraham, he is in the position that everything else failed. And then he was ready to listen to God. So what God tells him, come on, let me hear your summary. What God tells him.
Well, he says to go forth from the land of your kinsmen and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. Then I will make you a great nation. So he has to follow God, and then God will bless him.
Okay. So at the beginning, to receive everything what he wants, he need to go from his country, from his father's house, from his kindred, from his family, from the environment where he lives. And I'll tell you what the Midrash says on that. It's actually very interesting comment on that. It says, from your land, that means from your will, because the Hebrew word for will and land almost have the same root, okay? So that's how they connected. From your land, you have to depart from your land. You have to depart from your will. And then from your birthplace, you have to go from your emotional and behavioral self, because we are so attached to the place where we were born, to that are emotional attachments. Nostalgia is bringing us always back to the place where we have received life. And this our behavioral and emotional makeup is connected to the place where we were growing up. And then from your father's house. In our father's house, we have learned the way how to think, to distinguish what is important in your life, how to react to the problems. That means you have to depart from your intellect, from the way of how you think. And then they give the interesting comment. You see, if normally, if you would, in physical way, you first depart from what is last mentioned, from your father's house. Then you depart from your birthplace, from the city. Then you depart from the country. In physical order, you go opposite. But in spiritual order, you first have to depart from your will. You have to abandon your will. Then you have to abandon your feelings. Then you have to abandon your intellect. What is I would say you have to depart, you have to allow the change in your body, your spirit and soul to be controlled by God. That's my turn back to that, because I always see in everything at the end that everything is directed to our temptations of the body, spirit, and soul. And then this comment says, you see, human perfection is simply not enough. For anything human, even the objective, transcendent intellect, is still part and parcel of the created reality, ever subject to this created reality and never defined by it. Yet God invites us in his first command to Abraham to experience that which transcends all limit and definition, to experience God. Did I speak too much? There are some people here for whom it's unnatural to be silent, so that's...
Are you saying I'm not?
What?
You're saying I'm not unnatural?
Yeah, no. So did I speak too much? You need,
No.
Shall I?
No.
You may see that every time when God works with somebody, Abraham is called, and first thing what God does, God says, why to start from Abraham? God cannot be put in quarantine. You cannot quarantine God. You cannot quarantine God's spirit. He's always on the move. You never have God. God is always action, always on the move. So in the Garden of Eden, what God does, he walks with Adam, with Enoch, and in other patriarchs, he said, Enoch walked with God. What God does first, after all the sin, God says, I have to restore this earth. So he said to Abraham, you walk and I will occasionally be with you. Okay, he didn't say second part, but that's what I was going to say. With people of Israel, next group of people, God says, we are quarantined here in Egypt and you are in slavery. Let's go walk out from Egypt to the promised land. So they are walking. Practically always when God calls somebody, he calls people to walk with God. And this is not only about physical movement. If you see, I was 2 years ago in Israel, and boy, we were there 10 days, and we were in the bus. I was tired of traveling with the bus to all places which Jesus visited by walking.
I've been studying maps of the Middle East. I have an interacting map from the Bible times, and then you can put the current cities and times. And I am just astounded at the amount of territory that they walked and covered from one city to another to, I mean, it is just mind-blowing.
Yes, I mean, these guys were, when you see, Jesus was every now and then going from Galilee to Judea, and that was at least 2 days walk, and they were just going like there is constantly on the move. Then from Galilee they went to Mount of Transfiguration, which we were going with the bus on the almost to the top of the mountain, then small car to the very top of the mountain. I said, man, if I was walking up to the top of this mountain, I would not see only Jesus in the white. I would see stars in front of my eyes.
Agreed.
These people were constantly on the move. And this is what I want to say, is not just physically moving the body. It is also putting your will under the will of God, that you may learn how to absorb, to be guided by that will, putting your feelings to be guided by God. You know, that's what is important to be
listening.
Everything formed. Listening?
Yeah, listening to God. Listening to God.
Yeah, it's very, God did with people of Israel very important exercise, 40 years in the desert. They were walking together, and God would go in the form of the column of clouds or column of fire. And as long as the column would be stopped on one place, they would be stopped. And God didn't tell them, okay, we depart tomorrow at 6 a.m. No, columns start to move and they have to break the camp and follow. And then when, I don't know how far it goes, 1 mile, 10 miles, 20 miles, then it stopped and stopped there for 1 day, 3 days, 1 week, and then continue again. And in this way, they learned how to follow God and not their own will. It's true, Moses had probably every day he had questions from the people of Israel. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? We see that this moving, this walking, this its important spiritual sense is not just putting Abraham in different locality. Is Abraham entering in the way where he can learn how to obey God? Make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, much more. Probably would be good to come back that later when we come to chapter 21 of Abraham, of Genesis. So that's another 9 chapters. We are toward the end of the story. But at the end, I guess nobody will be surprised when I say that Abraham's faith will be tested. God will ask Abraham to sacrifice his son. And did Abraham have faith in this beginning of chapter 12 when God called him, Abraham, come and follow me to the land which I'm going to give you? Yes, Abraham had faith. Is this the same faith as in Genesis chapter 21, when Abraham was ready to sacrifice his son? knowing that God always fulfills the promise, always is trustworthy. Notice in chapter 21, his faith is much greater. Now is question, how he gained that faith? By walking with God. Going through all the problems. We'll see now he's going to Egypt, being not faithful to the promises of God, not really following instruction of God, but his own understanding, falling in the problems, and seeing that God is faithful even when he messes it up. And in this way, through his problems, through his recognizing again his failures, his weaknesses, he recognizes God's faithfulness and God's closeness. Make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm scared when I make it so much sense.
You're a genius, Father. You're a genius.
Oh yeah. Can you write this for me? Put the.
I try to tell you every time I see you, you're just a genius.
I have not found things which we missed in the creation of man, and I like it so much, so I want to tell you. When God created Eve, and he said he brought her to the man, and it says, as noted in Midrash, this image may well be that God is playing the role of the attendant who leads bride to the groom. And so the rabbis understand that as institution of marriage, okay? Because God brings a woman to the man. You see that?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry for confusing you, jumping back, but I like it so much, so I wanted to bring that point. No more jumping back, okay? I don't need
So
to.
it goes all the way back to creation. Then
Yes, yeah, that was.
Marriage, God joined the two.
God was bringing the bride to the man. You see, so for that reason is he takes the role of the attendant who brings the bride. And so that's the next in my notes is story about Sarah. And there is not much mentioned in Sarah. We will see that if we try to understand the Jewish mentality, in Jewish mentality, everything happened for a reason. So if you are sick, God is punishing you. And so that's the Jewish mentality. If woman is barren, it is some kind of punishment. So they have the problem of understanding that many of the matriarchs, Sarah and then Rachel, I think also was barren for some time, and so on, were barren. And on the other hand, they saw them as saints because they were saintly women, because they were doing the will of God. They were following wherever Sarah was following, wherever Abraham was going, and so on. So they had the difficulty to understand how they would be saintly and yet punished by God with barrenness and so on. I would say that, and again, I don't have backup of the church, but I think it's clear understanding that God allowed these women to be barren in order to show that the child which will be born is not just product of human relationship, but it is the will of God. It comes from the will of God.
Which makes sense.
It is a gift. Every child is gift. Even if you have 18 children or one child, every child is a gift. Yet.
Oh, like Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yes, she's another example.
Then we have Hannah, who was praying to God for years to have children, mother of Samson. She was praying to God for many years to have a child. And then God listened to her. And so she understood this child is gift from God. Okay?
Yeah.
If we receive something so easily, we don't see that this is the gift from God. Make sense? We take it as natural. So when child is given in this special way, we understand that this child is special. It is really, and then we know that this child will be often then God gives already ahead of time on the announcement of the child, gives him the name. That's another point. We have several characters that God changed their name. Is kind of changing their destiny, changing their, even changing their character. We'll see that with Jacob. We'll see when God changes his name, he almost changes his character.
Your father?
Yes.
I think, okay, I might be jumping ahead.
Okay.
But you know me, I'm going to get out of Genesis and Exodus. But anyway, as you said, God gave woman, or gave Eve to Adam. But it says, thus Sarah took, they're talking about, remember, the slave girl, Hagar.
Hagar,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. And it says, Sarah took Hagar, her Egyptian slave girl, and gave her to Abram as his wife.
Okay.
See, I'm saying, and we know that's how that story develops and whatnot. So it's almost like, I mean, in this day and age, I'm not going to give anybody to my husband. I'm sorry. But so I'm just saying, I just think that is quite interesting that in the creation story, God did that. And in this story, it's man, meaning Sarah, giving to man. There isn't, I mean, you know what I mean? There isn't that
I can
blessing.
easily explain that. I can easily explain that. You're right. You're a bit jumping ahead of time, but it is law of the land. In the marriage, actually, they have the marriage contract. And in the marriage contract, if the wife is barren, she is supposed to give her maidservant, the girl, to the husband. And in the law, this always initiative should come from the woman. It's not possible that the husband say, oh, my wife doesn't give me children, I will pick up this girl, I like that one. No, it's on the wife to pick up the girl. Probably she will pick up the ugliest one.
Ugly. Can I just,
sure.
Because I really don't know that much about other cultures, is that still practiced today?
I don't know that. I guess today with the surrogate mothers, that's basically what happens the same, just on different level. I would not know that. But at the time, that was the law of the land. Yeah, and it was in the marriage contract. If wife is barren and children are so important, she's expected to pick up one of her slave girls and offer her to husband. Okay. And but initiative comes from the wife, has to come from the wife. He cannot do it, otherwise would be adultery if he simply decides.
But isn't that interesting though, that because in the scripture, and it says a woman is submissive to her husband. So the husband is over the woman per se. And yet in this case, in their tradition or whatever, the contract, actually the woman is the one giving the gift to the man. Which, well, I mean, okay, maybe it's a minor thing. In my mind, I have hang-ups of
yeah, I believe you look things too black and white. They didn't denigrate the women. They just, I think most of time, at least in Jewish mind, the woman was not, if you see how they speak about Sarah and all these characters, they appreciate them very well. But there is this understanding that the husband is the head of the family, and so the wife is submissive to the woman. Yet that doesn't mean she doesn't have any rights or she's completely trodden upon or something. Okay.
All right. Now let's go on to where.
Okay. So, and since Gloria was speaking about the maps, let me show you the map. Okay, do you see the map?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
You see how I'm moving the around Ur?
Mhm.
Okay. So this Ur on the south near Persian Gulf is one place which was discovered by one archaeologist, and everybody believed, because this was famous archaeologist, this is the place of birth of Abraham. But then here is another Ur, which is now called Urfa, Turkey, on the north, which fits much better to biblical description, because it said Ur of Canaanites, Ur of Chaldeans, across the river Euphrates. So you see, this one is across the river. This one down there is not on, is beyond the, on this side of the river. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
And also, as they were going from Ur of Chaldeans, they stopped in Haran.
Oh, yeah.
And then they went. If they went from this Ur, it was not very likely to stop in Haran here. Make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
On my map, Father, it shows near the Garden of Eden, estimated to have been. Is that what you see?
Well, I don't have it here, and I would say that I'm keeping that the first 11 chapters of Genesis are legendary, so we don't take that. I would never say there is no one specific place on the planet Earth where
Okay.
which God could have pointed Garden of Eden, but I would not try to for it.
Okay.
Okay, it's different type of story where if we get hung up trying to figure out where is the Garden of Eden, we may lose the track of what is important in the story.
Okay.
So that would, I believe, it seems to me as most likely place of birth of Abraham, according to what I was following. Also, the time of Abraham, usually time frame for Abraham was given, which I have seen, about 1400 to 2000 before Christ, okay? And following this one course, which I liked, the professor convinced me that the most likely time frame is about 1500 before Christ. So I accept that. I don't want to spend too much time on discussing why is that the best time. If somebody wants, we can discuss, but I accepted the arguments and so on. I don't think it's very important for us if we miss for 100 or 200 years here or there. Who cares? Correct.
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 Let me see. Next thing I have in my notes are midrashes about Sarah, and they have this. In this midrash, they describe her tent with that saying that her door were always open for the wind, that there was the light inside, and she was baking the bread. And all the days in which Sarah lived there was blessing sent through the dough with which she baked. All the days in which Sarah lived there was light burning from Shabbat evening to next Shabbat evening. So very surprisingly, they describe her tent as basically as tent of the meeting, as holy place. These symbols of the Ruah wind coming into the tent, that's the symbol of the Holy Spirit. Bread is symbol of the showbread, and the light is symbol of the light in the tabernacle, in the temple. So Midrash, the Jewish Midrash, describes Sarah as almost as her tent, as making God present in the where she is. Interestingly, Sarah, God doesn't speak to Sarah much. God speaks to Hagar 3 times. Angel speaks to Hagar. You remember 3 or 4 times he speaks to her. But to Sarah, angels speak only once, and to rebuke her, why did she laugh? So in the Bible story, you don't have the sense of this holiness of Sarah, except that she is ready to do the will of God.
Well, I do have a question. You were just talking about Sarah, and but where in the readings do we read of her?
Well, we are said that Abraham was married to Sarah, and
Right.
there is not much more said about her, except that later on she is going to angel of God will speak to her. I think in probably chapter 18. Yes, should be in chapter 18, where God, angel of God, or God asked her, "Why did you laugh?" And Sarah said, "I did not laugh." That's as I said. That's why I said I was surprised how much the Jewish rabbis gave importance to Sarah, because in the Bible story she almost doesn't appear. There was not much, and they made her to the point of that her tent is basically like tent of the meeting, like making God present. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't get that far read last night.
But
So
it's interesting in chapter 16, that's when she gives Hagar to Abraham, and then she turns around and she's jealous after she does Hagar conceives, and Hagar runs away, and that's when God first talks to Hagar. Where did you come from? Where are you going?
Yes.
So I think it shows that Sarah put on this nice image of, I'm such a wonderful woman, I'm going to give you to my husband, and then when it happens, she's what? Jealous.
Well, you have to understand that this slave girl now, if that child was so important,
Would be inherit.
For all life, the Abraham waits for that child, and Sarah could not give that child, and now slave girl gives that child. Now slave girl feels more important than wife. Of course, that would create tensions.
you
Sure.
can bet it would. Yeah.
What's that? I mean, and
I wouldn't have
according
wanted to be Abraham.
and according to Midrash, later on, when they had Isaac, Ishmael was playing with bow and arrow and almost hit Isaac. That would not be strange that he would want to get rid of the one who would inherit everything.
Yeah.
So there were very real tensions there. But it's also, we will see, interesting to see the story that God treats Hagar there are no villains in Bible story. That's interesting. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's without sin. Nobody's without...
Because it's real.
Nobody's without faults, but also nobody's villain. Even Hagar, who is not really interesting in following God of Israel, she obeys and so on, and God speaks to her gently, protects her child. Even Ishmael, who doesn't inherit the promises of God given to Isaac, through covenant to Abraham, even Ishmael is defended and protected. So there are no actual villains in that. That's interesting part. It's everybody. Nobody's perfect, but nobody's actually also the like. The story is not black and white. That's what I try to say. There is no character which is absolutely Abraham in the story. He messes up. We will see. We didn't read it today. He will say for Sarah that it is his wife, his sister. You remember that?
Yeah, when they go, yeah.
And he will do it twice. And then I will give you out the thing which you probably never heard. You might have read it and forgot it. That she is actually his sister, half sister. We will see that in chapter 20. You know, we come to that surprise in chapter 20. Why we didn't know that before? And so on. So he goes, the rabbis are very confused how to deal that. He goes against the law of the incest, which was given much later, the law, actual law, but still rabbis that don't know how to deal with Abraham, who went against what they felt is natural law. It is natural law not to marry your half sister. And rabbis were confused with that. And that's what I like about Bible story. Nobody's perfect, and yet nobody's villain. Not even Saul, King Saul, maybe that would be in Old Testament the closest villain. Pharaoh is villain. He is always symbolizing evil.